China has made territorial claims in the Pacific that have dubious legal standing. Most notably is China's claim of the South China Sea as its sovereign territory. The Chinese use their Coast Guard for enforcement, however. The most effective way to enforce its claims is the Chinese Maritime Militia to conduct gray zone activities to pressure countries to submit to China. Gray zone tactics is using non-military means of coercion to achieve political, economic, or other policy goals in the gray area between war and peace. The Communist Party uses these tactics to exert power in the region and claims that it is acting peacefully and lawfully. China uses these tactics to manufacture crises that can be leveraged to create change in its favor. The Maritime Militia is a paramilitary force directed by party officials with the mission of fishery enforcement, freedom of navigation, maritime guerrilla operations, and support. Being unarmed is important to be portrayed as peaceful fishermen who do not pose a threat. This does not mean the Maritime Militia is not threatening. It has nearly 200,000 vessels available that allow it to use mob-like tactics that can overwhelm another country's navy, coast guard, or fishing boats. There are two strategies of the Maritime Militia depending on the opponent. Against a strong opponent like the US Navy, it can adopt a tactic of obstruction to slow or stop an action, like a freedom of navigation missions in the South China Sea, while simultaneously using its action as a form of communication of the Chinese policy positions. Against a weak opponent, it can be more provocative and aggressive to attempt to lure the opposing country to use of force against the Maritime Militia that China can subsequently use to justify using armed force to protect Chinese fishermen and raise the level of tension. The advantage of the Maritime Militias is their potential numbers can overwhelm a country's navy, coast guard, or fishing fleets. Since they are not armed with the capability to pose a threat to a naval vessel, their presence is outside of most naval rules of engagement. Submitting to China will move the Overton window and justify future claims by repeating tactics to push the window further while avoiding an armed conflict. Opponents will become cautious in the future to avoid confrontation, which also serves the Chinese goal. To summarize, the Maritime Militia is an extension of the CCP of utilizing irregular forces to create a crisis or a dilemma against its opponents. Timidity will lead to increasing pressure, and being too aggressive against an unarmed force could lead to a military confrontation and a propaganda campaign to shape world opinion. Seeking a countermeasure to this tactic is needed against Chinese claims in the South China Sea.